The Academy forbade weapons that day. Still, Jerick arrived with 6, gleaming with uneasy brilliance. The alien duelist descended from a bloodline renowned for their mastery of blades, his 4 arms each brandishing a curved sword humming with stored resonance. Pupils from countless species leaned forward in their seats, antennae twitching, frills spreading, gill slits clicking in eager rhythm. This was the Academy's annual showcase, a contest to decide if martial dominance outweighed intellectual mastery. Zerk selected the human visitor, assuming it would end quickly. After all, humans were smaller, their skeletons fragile, their muscles modest when compared with colossal saurids or crystalline insectoids. Yet the human didn't reach for armor, shield, or spear. He calmly placed a notebook on the dueling floor, uncapped an ordinary pen, and smiled as though facing nothing harsher than a pop quiz. Confusion rippled across the amphitheater. Jerick angled his upper blades in challenge, though his lower hands shifted nervously, uncertain why this mammal would insult tradition by holding up a writing tool. The ritual instructor raised a transparent appendage, signaling the duel's start. The alien lunged, expecting panic, a scramble, perhaps a desperate dodge. Instead, the human leaned just enough aside and scribbled swiftly across the page. A hollow projector embedded in the arena synced to every student's slate, flaring to life, revealing a hastily scrawled diagram. Lines cut across one another, forming momentum arcs, force angles, and vectors. Gasps erupted. The human had charted the exact paths of Jerick's strikes in real time. Every swing, no matter how vicious, already appeared mapped, as if rehearsed 1,000 times beforehand. The alien staggered, his blades clashing harmlessly against the barriers, hitting only air, while the sketch updated with seamless accuracy, predicting his movements before they even began. Nervous laughter spread through the crowd, but it was edged with awe. They realized the pen was no insult, it was a different kind of weapon entirely. The clash became one not of steel versus flesh, but instinct versus calculation. Jerick feinted left, twisted high, and slashed from twin angles. Yet the human had already drawn the counterpath, stepping aside a fraction of a second before impact. Beads of metallic sweat dripped from Jerick's forearms, but the human's wrist moved steadily, pen racing faster and faster. Equations blossomed. Kinetic drag, parabolic thrust, center of mass collapse. Every alien watching felt their pride falter. They recognized this was no duel of warriors, but a public dissection of Jerick's entire craft. The instructor resisted stepping in, though his frills flickered uneasily. Rarely had an exhibition shifted from honor to humiliation so abruptly. Yet the human did not boast. He lifted the page mid-dodge, addressing the class. "Here," he explained, "when he pivots, the torque pulls his lower arm wide. That opens safe entry points here, here, and here. His upper blade stretches too far, leaving this flank exposed. This isn't strength, it's leverage." Students hurried to jot notes, replaying the holograms across their devices. Jerick snarled, not from hatred, but from the unbearable sting of having each attempt dismantled before landing. He slashed wildly, only feeding more data for the mortal's analysis. Soon, the human shifted focus, sketching not only defenses but counters, simple lines marking where a jab might topple the duelist. Yet he never struck. Instead, he circled with restraint, as though the arena were a chalkboard and Jerick merely a demonstration subject. Above, clan banners flickered uneasily, and murmurs swept through the crowd. "Humans are fragile," whispered a crystalline student. "But what weapon bends reality onto a page like that?" Another muttered, "He defeats him by teaching him." The fight had become a lecture, unsettling even the masters observing. Jerick's breath came ragged, 2 blades lowering, his footing shaky, yet his pride still drove him forward. He hurled a storm of thrusts, but the human now wrote in full sentences, predictions scrolling across every display. Not just diagrams, but commentary, instruction, analysis. Gasps spread as the words appeared, "Step left and strike upward. I will leave that path open." Jerick froze mid-motion, staring at the sentence projected for all to see. To accept the human's note was to accept his mercy. To refuse was to show fear of the script. His clan's heritage screamed at him to strike regardless, yet deep down he knew the pen had already written the ending. For the first time in the Academy's long history, a duel was being composed like a living story, each movement a sentence, each feint a metaphor, crafted in real time by a human who treated combat as literature. The instructors traded uneasy glances, debating if they should halt the event, but the students only leaned closer, entranced, sensing they were not watching shame but the spark of a new doctrine. The human tapped his pen lightly on the notebook, as though inviting the next passage. And in that pause, Jerick realized the battle was no longer between 2 fighters, but between tradition and comprehension. His blades wavered, hovering above a mortal who had never once lifted a hand in aggression. The crowd hushed, the amphitheater thick with expectation, waiting to see if Jerick would strike, or if the mortal's words had already disarmed him. The silence grew so taut every alien fidgeted, tails twitching, wings rustling, mandibles chattering. Jerick's arms trembled, not only from fatigue, but from the unbearable feeling of being dissected before his peers. His lineage, a dynasty of duelists famed across systems, weighed on him like armor too heavy to bear. Yet the mortal stood serene, pen poised to translate action into meaning. The pressure shattered when Jerick loosed a roar and lunged again, for blades flashing in a blur. Sparks cascaded across the shields, but the human never flinched. His pen traced a looping figure on the page, and the projection revealed an elegant spiral. To the audience, the spiral became simulation, every strike folding back upon itself, arms entangling, momentum collapsing inward. Jerick stumbled, nearly crashing to the ground. The laughter this time carried no mockery, but awe, like the breathless release of watching a ship survive an impossible asteroid field. At last the human spoke, never raising his eyes from the notebook. Combat is language. He speaks it in fury. I translate. The words echoed strange and heavy through the amplifiers. Some gasped, others scribbled frantic notes, but all stared in rapture at the audacity of treating battle as something written, read, and explained. Jerick panted, humiliation burning in his gaze, and tried a new tactic. Instead of head-on assault, he darted back, circling fast, so fast most species could not follow. Yet each dash left a glowing trail on the hologram, paths already mapped seconds before he made them. The mortal's pen raced, recording not just his position, but his intentions. New text flared, he will attempt flanking right. Counter is a simple step. And when Jerick slashed from that very angle, the human stepped aside exactly as scripted. Murmurs swelled into sharper whispers. For generations the Academy taught that only instincts, honed over lifetimes, could sense intent in real time. Yet here was an outsider diagramming it casually, as though doodling during class. Students whispered, if humans can do this, what else can they reduce to equations? Another voice trembled, can any style be dismantled simply by writing it down? The elder instructors shifted uneasily, knowing such whispers threatened the roots of their doctrine. But the human never boasted. His voice remained calm, like a tutor explaining homework. Strength without direction is wasted. Fury, without shape, becomes noise. But precision requires thought. Jerick, stung, gambled everything. He hurled all four blades outward, each programmed on a recall arc. The crowd gasped. It was a forbidden maneuver, dangerous enough to pierce the barriers if mistimed. The weapons spun like bladed suns converging from every side. But the pen had already finished its work. The page filled with concentric rings, arrows, annotations flowing like poetry in geometry. On the projection, the arcs crossed in a deadly knot, and then, before they could strike, the blades collided mid-air, shattering and tumbling to the floor in clattering ruin. Silence thundered. 4 weapons, treasures of a warrior clan, lay broken. Jerick stared in disbelief, limbs trembling. He had not been defeated by force, nor scarred by blade, but undone by diagrams that revealed his limits. Yet the human still made no move to claim victory. Instead, he lifted the notebook and addressed the hall itself. The duel is not with him. It is with the belief that strength alone is supreme. Knowledge, clarity, foresight, these are weapons no shield can deflect. His words rolled through the amphitheater like a storm. Some cheered, others hissed, but none looked away. For many, this was the first time they had seen a duel transform into a lecture, and a lecture into revelation. Jerick's pride cracked. He dropped to one knee, not in surrender to the human, but because his legs failed beneath the crushing realization, he had been revealed not as mighty, but as predictable. The mortal lowered his pen, crouched, and spoke softly so only Jerick could hear, I did not wish to shame you. But sometimes, we learn most when pride is cut open. This is not your end. It was the beginning of seeing anew. The alien's mandibles clicked, a sound balanced between despair and reverence. Around them, chaos broke loose. Students shouted, teachers quarreled, the amphitheater roaring with disorder. The academy had rules, but none foresaw a triumph written instead of fought. An elder instructor with silver-tipped antennae rose at last, her voice steady but taut. Enough. The match is concluded. Yet even as she declared it, her gaze lingered on the human's notebook, as though recognizing in its pages both danger and promise. Word would ripple outward, beyond the academy, across fleets and worlds, of the duel where a master of blades was unmade by ink. And in the restless silence that followed, all understood this was not an ending, but the start of something vast, spreading like fractures through crystal. The human closed his notebook with a gentle snap, though he kept his pen ready, as if the true duel had only begun. The amphitheater stayed wild long after the weapons fell. Students argued furiously, dozens of dialects clashing, wings beating, tails flicking, claws drumming against desks. For generations, the Academy's duels had been rituals of strength, demonstrations of honor and mastery. But what they had just seen overturned that legacy entirely. No blow had landed, no blood had spilled, yet the verdict was inescapable: the mortal had won. Instructors tried to restore calm, but the tension was too charged. Some demanded disqualification, insisting no duel had occurred. Others swore it was the most brilliant contest in centuries. What greater victory exists than triumph without violence? In the storm of voices, the human remained composed, notebook shut, pen loose in hand, waiting as though he knew silence would come, and truth with it. At last, the head instructor descended, her crystalline robe scattering the arena lights into rainbow shards. Her voice cut clean through the noise. The duel is finished, but its meaning is not. The Academy must decide what has been proven here. Her ancient eyes turned to the mortal. Human, what have you shown us? The student did not raise his tone, but every ear strained. That knowledge is not lesser than strength. That foresight is a blade sharper than steel. That combat, like language, can be read, written, rewritten. And that a pen, humble as it is, can end a battle before it begins. His words pierced deeper than any weapon, resonating in ways the students could not yet name, yet would remember all their lives. Some were shaken, others liberated. Jerick, still kneeling, lifted his head and rasped, "Then teach me. If I cannot defeat you, I must learn from you." Gasps swept the chamber, for a duelist of his heritage to bow to an outsider was unheard of. Yet his sincerity silenced mockery before it could rise. The human extended his hand. Jerick clasped it with two of his forearms. In that moment, the duel became something else, not rivalry, but the spark of partnership. The elders debated furiously in the days ahead. Some feared such knowledge would render warriors obsolete. Others envisioned peace, conflicts unraveled on parchment before blood was shed. News raced outward, carried by couriers, whispered in markets, broadcast aboard starships. Commanders asked how a single human scholar had undone a master duelist. Scholars demanded his diagrams. Strategists feared the implications. Invitations poured in, summoning the mortal to councils of command, halls of strategy, even assemblies of planetary defense. Wherever he went, he did not boast. He carried the same notebook and pen, teaching that combat was narrative, that strength without thought was incomplete, and that humans, fragile though they appeared, were perilous because they could turn any battlefield into a classroom. Others followed. Not only Jerick, but many species began sketching during practice, analyzing instead of charging. Some resisted, clinging to tradition, but the Academy shifted. New lessons were inscribed. Duels grew to include both the mind and the blade. And at the heart of it all, the legend of the pen against steel grew. Jerick transformed most of all. Once proud and reckless, he tempered his ferocity with analysis, his fury balanced by foresight. He and the human stood side by side, their alliance whispered across systems, the four-armed duelist and the mortal with a pen, rewriting the meaning of battle. The tale spread wider still. Children on distant worlds sketched diagrams, dueling invisible foes. Starship officers debated strategies with chalkboards beside star charts. Always at the core was the story of one human who proved the greatest victories were written, not fought. Years later, when the mortal graduated, the Academy held a final ceremony in the same arena. No duel this time, only students of every species, each raising a pen or stylus. The head instructor spoke, "Blades cut flesh. Words cut deeper. Today we honor not the end of tradition, but its widening. May the Academy remember always that the smallest tool, in the right hands, can reshape a galaxy." The human stood quietly, humbled as thousands lifted pens like swords. He smiled, not for the duel long past, but for the idea planted, destined to outlive him. Jerick stood beside him, placing a blade into the human's hand. "Not for war," he murmured, "but for memory, so that your pen and my blade may always stand together." The mortal lifted both pen and blade high, and the amphitheater thundered, not with victory's cry, but with recognition. That a fragile-seeming human had revealed the sharpest edge was not steel, but thought. Thus the duel of ink and blades closed, not in defeat, but in a galaxy forever remade.